Hi, everyone. It's Lisa Starr with the StarrCast Podcast, and I'm so excited to kick off 2022 with a discussion on a topic that I think will be of great interest to many of us in the spa industry. I am lucky to be joined by Jeremy McCarthy, the Group Director of Spa and Wellness for Mandarin Oriental. Globally, he is in charge of 26 spas and over 30 hotels all around the world. The number is always changing, but Jeremy is known to many of us in America as he started his career here, worked for many years for La Costa, for Starwood, and I'll let him tell you a little bit more about his background. But Jeremy is a big thinker, and we'll get into that a bit more. So welcome, Jeremy. Thank you so much for joining the podcast.
Thank you, Lisa. It's good to be with you. Good to see you and hear you.
It's good to see and hear you too. It's been so long. How many years now that you moved to Hong Kong? Like 5, maybe?
Well, I've been here 7.5 years,
Wow.
but now because of the pandemic, it's been going almost 3 years since I've been back to the States. So I'm
Wow.
looking forward to getting back soon.
We hope that you can as well. I'm sure your family would appreciate that. So Jeremy,
Absolutely.
just tell the listeners, what did I miss from your bio? I mean, you started out in wellness how many years ago would you say?
Longer than I would want to
I
admit,
know,
but yeah,
I'm in the same way.
going over 30 years now that I've been working in the hospitality industry,
Mhm.
in spa and wellness in some facet or another. And I think you covered it. I mean, probably the main thing which might be relevant to this conversation is my academic background is in psychology.
Mhm.
And so I studied psychology as an undergrad and then later went back to school and got my Master of Applied Positive Psychology and did my thesis on the psychology of spas and well-being. So I think that kind of ties into the topics that we're going to talk about today.
Mhm. That's perfect. Yes, I was going to ask that. Not many people in spa and wellness have your background. And you did the very acclaimed program with Martin Seligman at the University of Pennsylvania, correct?
Correct.
And was that, I'm going to say, 10 years ago?
That's probably right. Actually, already more than 10 years. It was about
Mm.
13 years ago, 12 and a half years ago
Mhm.
that I graduated from that program.
So, Jeremy, what was the impetus for you to go back to school when you had a full-time job, a family? I mean, that was a big undertaking. What made you decide to do that?
Well, I came into the spa industry with an undergraduate degree in psychology, and when I studied psychology, it was because I was really interested in my early career in the fitness side of the industry. So I was interested in coaching. I was a swim coach and a
Mm.
martial arts instructor, and I studied psychology because I was interested in understanding human performance and
Mhm.
motivation
Mm.
from the mental aspects of performance and motivation. But when you studied psychology, at least when you were studying psychology 30 years ago, it was more about the negative aspects of psychology. So it was
Huh.
about anxiety, depression, mental illness. And I didn't find the academic side really focused on what I was interested in. But I came into the spa industry and I felt from the beginning of my career, I felt that what we offer in our industry is first and foremost a psychological experience, and that it's not so much about the physical aspects of the
Mhm.
treatments and the products and the facilities, but it's really how do we make people feel and what do we do to their psychology. So when I learned in 2007 or 2008 about the Applied Positive Psychology program at University of Pennsylvania, which was more about these positive aspects of psychology, about goal accomplishment,
Mhm.
motivation, well-being, happiness, positive relationships, positive functioning. It was kind of like that was the psychology that I
Right.
had always wanted to study, and that motivated me to go back to school and focus on positive psychology.
It's so wonderful that that program exists because you're right. The focus as in all of medicine, has been on treating conditions or diseases and not preventing and being positive. So it's perfect that that program was introduced, and I know that you got a lot out of it.
Yeah, and I think it's shaped the way that we think about well-being in general. I mean, I think today, if a student went back and studied psychology as a basic undergraduate degree, they would be seeing a lot more of the positive aspects.
Hmm.
It really has made the science more well-rounded than maybe it was 30 years
Hmm.
ago.
For sure. So you recently wrote an article on compassionate leadership. And so that's what we thought we would talk about today, what your thoughts are on that. Something that we always needed. I mean, you always need to be that kind of leader. And yet it's become so important in the last, what are we going on 2 years now, of managing in a pandemic. So, can you speak a little bit about what you're seeing the impact on the hospitality of COVID and what led you to write this paper?
Yes, well, it's interesting because I think at the beginning of the pandemic, all of us in the industry were very worried about what this would do to our businesses
Mhm.
and what would be the consumer response to this kind of situation. So I remember in some of the, kind of early industry discussions around this, there were people saying, customers aren't going to want to go back to spas, that the spa industry would basically um, be killed by the pandemic because customers wouldn't want to have that kind of close contact with our employees, and these kinds of experiences that we offer would not survive that kind of
It's
pandemic.
funny you say that. I'm remembering all of us being on those Global Wellness Institute webinars every week, just like because none of us were working and we were just, there would be 300 of us on the call, like what's going on in Malaysia? What's going on in your country? And all thinking the same. Will we have work again? I was
That's
thinking
right.
the same thing. Do I need to find something else to do, with myself?
Yeah. So, I mean, here we are now 2 years into it, and so we are a lot more knowledgeable about what we're dealing with and what we're up against. But the interesting thing is all the fear that we had about consumers, I think, has kind of been, proven unjustified. Like we have seen in our, we have hotels all around the world, and we have seen in every location that as soon as kind of the virus gets under control or health measures are put in place, and that we have good standards for maintaining the cleanliness and safety in spa facilities, that the customers are not only ready
Mhm.
to come back, they're actually pushing us to open the spas sooner sometimes
Mhm.
than we're ready to, because they want to come back and have those experiences. So I think that's been an incredible validation of the value that consumers place on the kinds of services and the kinds of experiences that we offer. But what nobody really predicted in those early discussions was that the biggest challenge to our industry would not be convincing the customers to come back. It would be convincing the employees to come back. And that, I think, is where we now realize that we are at as an industry, is that people have gone through a lot of life-changing experiences over the last 2 years, and a lot of people have decided to make big shifts
Mhm.
in their career and in the way they think about work and in the way they think about their job. And so the big challenge for our industry is recruiting and retaining great people. Not so much trying to convince the customers to come back, but trying to convince our employees that this is an industry that is worth working in.
Well, it's so true what you say. I mean, we're connected around the world. I don't run spas around the world, but all of my consulting clients in the US will say that we're as busy as we can be. I mean, I don't have a single client in that can service the appointment demand that they have. And to your point, because all the people that work in the spa have not come back. And that was a thing that we never foresaw that. We were all so worried, as you said, about the customer, not thinking about the staff member and why wouldn't they want to come back. But there has been such a huge shift. And you speak to that in your paper. I'd love for you to elaborate on what you're seeing.
Yeah, I mean, right now, the number one complaint that we have in our spas is not about the service. It's not about safety measures or concerns about COVID. the number one complaint that we have in our spas today is from guests who are trying to get an appointment and they can't get in,
Go
because
figure.
of the difficulty in getting staff right now. So this is the big challenge of the industry, and I think, it's understandable in a lot of ways. I mean, because of what has happened, because of lockdowns, because of colleagues being placed on temporary furlough, because of people's pay being cut back in many cases, and many people losing their jobs, many people in our industry were forced to come to a crossroads where they had to at least think about, and really everybody has had to think about this. Even if your job wasn't affected, you had to worry
Mm-hmm.
that the
That it might
hospitality
be.
industry, yeah, the hospitality industry was facing difficulty, and I might have to, come up with a backup plan. So everybody in our hospitality industry has had to face this idea of what what else can I do, or how can I be entrepreneurial? How can I use the skills that I've developed, the experience that I have, the talent that I have, and how can I find another way to earn a living? And the reality is, we live in an age where it's easier than ever before to be entrepreneurial and to find a new way to make a living. So
For
I think for
sure.
a lot of people, this was an opportunity. And I mean, even you, I mean, you're kind of doing your podcast,
Hmm.
and you're launching into new digital channels in the way
Right.
that you work and in the way that you do your business. And so a lot of people, I think, have looked at their life and had to figure out, is there something I can do? Can I use the internet? Can I do
Hmm.
something online? Can I develop the business idea that I've had in my back pocket since I was
Hmm.
in college, that's just been sitting there because I've been too busy working? Now when people are on furlough, or they're not working full-time hours, they've had time to focus on developing those other ideas. So we have to work harder now if we want to convince people to come back and work a full-time job in our industry. We have a lot more to compete with than we had before the pandemic.
It's so true what you say, Jeremy. We know that companies for many years wanted, were entertaining the idea of some work at home, some remote, but they were really afraid to pull that trigger because of loss of productivity, loss of control. And so they continued to pay for 6 floors in a downtown high rise building. And the pandemic forced that hand. And what I'm sure you've seen the companies have discovered is that they have lost no productivity at all. In fact, they're gaining it. I know my husband doesn't commute for an hour and a half a day now. He's working that time, and he is just as productive, if not more so, than he was. And so it has caused this whole rethinking. And the same way on our staff, they weren't out looking for things, but when you're forced into the minimum in the US that places were closed was about 3 months, the shortest. And I had a California client that only does facials that was closed for almost a year. I mean, and if you're going to be shut down like that, people are going to find other things to do. And to your point, they did. And they discovered, oh, I kind of like this, right?
That's right. Yeah, I think of this as I mean, people talk about the great resignation, right?
Mm,
Like that a lot of people are resigning, either leaving the workforce altogether or certainly changing industry and changing the jobs that they do. But the way that I think about it is that what we are seeing is a great reprioritization.
I
So
love that.
everybody has had to question, is the way that I'm working the best way for me to make a living? Is it stable? Is it secure? Do I feel safe? Do I feel like this is going to sustain me and my family for the long term? Um, and not only just questioning the way they work and the way they make a living, but we've faced this existential health crisis,
Hmm.
which means we've all had to think about, really, life is precious, and people are dying from this virus, and it makes everybody question our own mortality and our own purpose in life and how we want to be spending our time on this planet. So everybody has, kind of been forced in these past 2 years to really reflect on how they spend their time, what they do, what is meaningful to them, what is important to them, and what do they value. And so people have, I don't think of it so much as a great resignation. It's this reprioritization where people have figured out that maybe certain things are more important to me. When you talk about, people working from home and not having to commute into the office, people realize like that time is important to me. I don't want to be wasting my time commuting 2 hours every day to go back and forth to some office that really I don't need to be in, because I could be working from anywhere nowadays. So people have really thought through a lot of these things because we've given them time to think, and they've established now new priorities for themselves and new things that are important. And our industry, and really I don't think this is unique to hospitality.
Mm-hmm.
I think all industries have to consider that the workforce now has new priorities, and we have to change the way that we invite people to work with us that reflects those priorities.
And that new priority is not work, right? It's themselves and their personal happiness, and that's not a bad thing. But it is a massive mind shift from when you and I grew up, and the job was the thing, and you went in if you were sick. You would never let people down, and now it's just a completely different situation.
Yeah, although I would say I wouldn't go so far as to say that work isn't important to people. I think people want to feel like they are contributing meaningfully to society, and that they're doing something that is of value and that they feel is
Mhm.
important.
Oh, agreed.
And and that they're using their talents and their strengths in the service of a meaningful goal. And a lot of people find that sense of purpose and meaning and satisfaction through their work. And I actually think that is one of the strengths of the spa industry,
Mhm.
is that the work that we do is very meaningful, and the people who do this work are very passionate about the impact that their work has on their customers, and the way that we make people feel and the way that we help them to feel better and help them to live better. So I think a lot of people will continue to find that sense of purpose and meaning and satisfaction through their work, but they maybe don't want to put up with all of the crap that
Mhm.
goes along with doing that.
Right.
So it's kind of like, how do we set up our work in a way that allows people to deliver the best of themselves and bring value to their customers, but eliminate some of the,
Mhm.
the stuff that has always gone along
Mhm.
with it, that has been frustrating or demeaning or demotivating to the
Mhm.
workforce.
Well, and that brings us to our topic, right? You and I are not going to solve the problem of getting more people to come into work in any location in the world, but we do have the power to think about how we're managing the people that we have. So we can do the best job with the staff that we have and keep them, to your point earlier of retaining them. I mean, it's one thing to attract them, and now we've got to keep them. And so that's where compassionate leadership comes in. So perhaps you could talk to us about what does that mean to be a compassionate leader?
Well, I'm sure you've heard the saying before that people don't leave companies, they leave their manager. They
Mm-hmm.
they leave the person they're working for. And um, I think as I reflect on the state of the industry and where we are, and what do we need to do to attract more people and to retain the people that we have, it really comes down to that direct relationship that a manager has with their team. I mean, you can have great compensation package, you can have a
Mm-hmm.
great benefits package, you can have incredible colleague wellness program, which we have a lot of in our company. We do incredible things for our employees from a wellness standpoint. But at the end of the day, it's really how good of a job does the manager of the team do of making sure that the people on their team are looked after and feel
Mm-hmm.
cared for, and are doing what they want to be doing and are able to bring their strengths to work every day, and are allowed, given the platform and the environment where they're capable of being their best. So, to me, when I think about what does the industry need right now, it's not, we I think in the past we would have said the thing that we're lacking in our industry is we need, better financial acumen or
Mhm.
understanding the business, or we need to get better at marketing and promotion and PR so that we can convince the customers to come into the spa. Those things are still important, but the most important thing right now is that we have leaders that know how to take care of their people.
Mhm. Well, Jeremy, you outlined in the white paper that you've written a 5-step process to work on being a compassionate leader. I wonder if you could walk us through some of those. I know the first few are connected to how you relate to the staff, beginning with talking to people. That was your first point.
Yes, so I actually think the spa industry has a very particular challenge in the relationship between the manager and the employee, because our colleagues in the spa, and if I think especially about our therapists, who are kind of the lifeblood of the spa, they spend a lot of their time alone in a room with their customer.
So true.
And so compared to other employees in a hotel, let's say, or other employees in any business, the spa therapist sometimes has limited access to their manager
Mm.
for direct conversation.
And it's
And
not
that
very
means
collegial work. It's not work you do alongside someone. You are alone
e-
in a room, a great deal.
exactly. So I mean, I think a typical thing in a spa is a therapist might see, the memo that the manager posted up on the bulletin board in the break room, or an email that the manager sent out to the team, and they read that, and they don't have the opportunity to go and discuss with the manager, what was behind that memo.
Mhm.
Why did you send out that email? Why have you implemented this new policy? They don't have that much time to have the conversation about it. They just go into a treatment, and then they're
Mhm.
90 minutes alone in a room with their customer. But meanwhile, they might be ruminating or
Mm.
thinking about something that the manager did or said. And so that is a real challenge for the spa industry. And so I think as compassionate leaders in this industry, it's absolutely critical that the managers make sure that they have time for direct one-on-one communication with every one of their colleagues. And that means when you have a busy therapist who's spending a lot of time in the treatment room, you've got to find those moments, like, oh, let me block 30 minutes on
Mm.
their schedule so I can just sit down and have coffee with them and just hear how they're doing, and listen to whatever they have to say. Or let me make sure that I'm in the break room in between appointments, so if anybody has a
Mm.
question for me or anybody wants to ask me something, I'm available. But yeah, just getting out and making sure that you are spending that quality time with every individual on your team, listening to them, talking to them, asking them if they have any questions. And I think,
How often, Jeremy, do you try to do that with your staff? Like, how often should the spa director be having these conversations?
well, I think you should be talking to everybody on your team at least once a week. I mean, it's almost every day there should be some communication,
Mhm.
with the people on your team. But you need to have some awareness as a leader of when's the last time that I really had a moment one-on-one with this particular colleague.
Mhm.
Now, there's no kind of direct answer to that, because obviously as a spa director, I mean, you mentioned La Costa. When I worked at La Costa, I had 120 employees. If I was sitting down and having a one-on-one meeting with everybody once a week,
That would
I
be your
wouldn't,
job.
yeah, I wouldn't get
Uh,
anything else done. But hopefully I have other managers on my team that are also doing that, and
mhm.
also, shouldering that burden of communication with everybody. But even in a big team like that in La Costa, where I have 120 employees, in that kind of environment, it's even more important that I'm aware of how long has it been since I've spoken
Mm.
to, each person. Because if I have somebody on my team and I haven't talked to them in a month, let's
Mm.
say a month just went by and our schedules never kind of, if I wasn't intentional
Mhm.
about making sure that I sat down with that person, then maybe a lot of time goes by and I don't really know how they're doing, how they're
Mm.
feeling, what they might be frustrated by, what experiences they've had. So I need to make sure that I have that awareness that I'm getting around to everybody on the team.
So when you talk to them, you're checking in, but you're also looking for deeper sort of purpose.
Yeah, so the second thing that I talk about in terms of compassionate leadership is when you're talking to people, you need to be asking their why. You need
Mm.
to understand, why are they working for you? And I mean, we've seen Simon Sinek, who talks
Mhm.
about
Yeah.
finding your why, and that it's all about finding that purpose behind what you do. And I think as a leader, sometimes managers, we have this vision for what we're trying to accomplish. And the traditional role of a manager is to kind of try to get everybody bought into your vision.
Mhm.
That this is my spa, this is my business, and now I need to build a team of people who all believe as passionately as I do in the
Mm.
success of this spa. And hopefully a lot of your employees do share that vision, and they do want the spa to be successful, and they want to help you be successful. But the reality is none of the employees are going to be as passionate about the success of the spa as the owner of the spa, first and foremost, and then maybe the director of the spa. So the reason people are working for you is usually driven by other things. Some of them might be wanting to build a career in hospitality, but
Mhm.
some of them might be they're, just want a steady job that is secure and that gives them benefits so that
Mhm.
they can take care of their family. And maybe their priority is being having time to spend with their kids. Maybe they are working for you because you have a flexible schedule that gives them the time that they need because they have other interests that they're
Right.
pursuing. Maybe they're going to school to study something. Maybe they're spending quality time with their kids. Maybe they need to work early morning so that they can be
Mhm.
home in the afternoon when their kids come home from school. So every person on your team has a reason why they've decided to work for you. And I always think about, I mean, this kind of goes into the third step. But once you understand the reason why people work for you, then you have to think about, is working for you helping them to accomplish their objectives? Because
That's a tall order, right? I mean, as a
100%.
manager, it's like, oh, because you're trying to advance the business vision, but you're worried about the 56 people working for you all achieving their goals too. That's why you never get any sleep, right?
That's right. I mean,
Mm.
you should be, if you are a compassionate leader, you should be losing sleep over whether or not your employees are fulfilling their goals and their dreams and their ambitions by working for you, and not only thinking about
Mm.
what your owner is wanting or your boss is wanting or what the bottom line of the business is needing. um, I think about it like there is the legal contract at work, and then there's the social contract at work.
Hmm.
So the legal contract is you hire somebody and you explain to them, this is how much we're going to pay you.
Hmm.
These are the benefits that we're going to provide. We're going to provide you meals. We're going to provide you a uniform. And in return for all of these things that we're providing you, this is your job description. This is our SOP manual. These are
Hmm.
our training documents. These are all the things that we expect you to do. Now, the reality is we usually expect much more of our employees than what is outlined in the contract.
Hmm.
We don't want to hire people who are just robots and they just say, just give me the SOP and I'll just follow this. We want people who are going to care about their
Hmm.
job, care about their coworkers, care about the customers. They're going to evaluate the circumstances in different situations, even when they fall outside of what has been specifically mapped out in the SOP manual. And they're going to be creative and come up with good solutions and solve problems and, help the business to survive in ways that go way beyond what is spelled out in the company's
So
training
there's
manual.
sort of what you're saying, there's the tacit agreement between, what you'll each provide, but there's a lot that is not written down, but is expected or hoped for.
Exactly. And we want to have employees working for us who don't just follow the letter of the
Job
training
description,
manual.
right?
We want people who are going to step up, go above and beyond, bring their energy, bring their passion, bring their emotions to their work, bring that smile on their face every day, cheer people up, elevate the people around them, make it a good place to work for their coworkers, make the guests feel welcome when they come in. All of these things go above and beyond the legal contract at work. And so the social contract at work is basically saying, look, I want you to bring the best of yourself to my business. I want you to come in here and I want you to help me achieve my goals. My goal is I want this spa to be, making $5 million a year. And I want this spa to be, to receive the Forbes 5-star award, or I want it to be rated the #1 spa in this city. So I'm asking you to go above and beyond the legal contract. I want you to help me achieve my dreams and my goals. But in exchange, I need to help you achieve your dreams and your goals. So I need to know, what is it that you want to get out of this? What are you trying to accomplish? Maybe they're going to school because they want to become a doctor and they're studying medicine. Maybe they're working now, but really they want to be a stay-at-home parent and they want to spend as much time with their kids as possible. Maybe they want a career in hospitality and maybe they want to grow and someday they want to take over
your job.
Yeah. But whatever it is, if I want them to give the best of themselves to help me achieve my goals, then I have to be thinking about what am I bringing to them and how am I helping them to achieve their goal.
So Jeremy, what do you do if you have been managing someone in this way for a number of months and you realize that maybe you can't meet their goal, like you're not helping them achieve their goal? What happens? How do you handle that?
Well, I think, for example, sometimes the best way to help somebody achieve their goal is to help them move
Define
on.
their goal.
Yeah, I mean, some people, I think it happens quite often, not just in hospitality, but in business in general, where leaders, they take it very personally when they have an employee who wants to leave. And sometimes, they won't forgive somebody who decides to resign or decides to go to another company or to another spa. But if I think about that social contract at work, if the best thing for one of my employees is to go pursue a new industry, maybe in a competitor, either a new job in a competitor or some new step in their career in a completely different industry, my job is to help them accomplish that, if that is the best thing for them. And if I do a good job of that, then other people on the team will see that working for me and working for this spa helps people to develop in their career. I don't
and
think
they'll trust you more, right? You get more trust.
Yeah, they don't have to develop in there. Of course, I want to retain people. And for people that, are a good fit and they believe in my company and my spa or my business, I want them to stay with me and I want them to grow with me. But if sometimes the best way to help someone is finding a new opportunity for them somewhere else,
free up their future, right?
Yeah, and maybe they come back later, or maybe one of their coworkers sees that and appreciates the fact that they achieved that opportunity not in spite of their current boss, but because their current boss was supporting them and helping them and mentoring them to accomplish what they needed to accomplish. Then it kind of makes your workplace more attractive to everyone.
Well, that's a great way to think of it, that your job is to help them be their best person. And it isn't necessarily to keep them in indentured slaves for the rest of their lives. So okay, you've addressed these points about getting your staff to trust you and to understand that you're on their side and you want to help them achieve their goals. And hopefully that means that the spa achieves its goals too, that you do it together. The fourth point on your paper is about personal time and respecting that. What were your thoughts on that?
Well, I just think this is one of the greatest aspects of this great reprioritization that we're talking about is, people don't want to spend all their time at work. So as much as I said, people do get a lot of value out of their work and contributing and finding meaning and purpose in what they do, but they also have other things that they're interested in. They have
Oh,
their
they have a
hobbies,
life after all, right?
they have a life outside of work. Yeah, go figure. So, people have their hobbies, people have their family, people have friends, people have other pursuits. People, nowadays, people might have other entrepreneurial
Hmm.
pursuits. They might have, their blog on the side, or their
Hmm.
podcast, or their side hustle, or their small business that they're running, after hours. So, people have their side hustles that they're
Right.
working on. So, um, and yet we work in this day and age where people are connected 24/7 through their devices, and it's harder than ever before to really disconnect from work. So I think one of the things that's critical, and the hospitality industry has been somewhat notorious because we are a 24/7 operation. We
Mm.
tend to be busy when other people are free. So we are busiest on the weekends, on
Mhm.
holidays, when people are normally on vacation, in the evenings. And so there's a tendency in the hospitality industry to expect people to kind of roll up their sleeves and chip in and, work your weekends, work your days off, maybe not always take your vacations when you want to. It's hard to get a day off because you want to have Saturday off because little Joey's in a softball tournament,
Mhm.
and Saturday is the busiest day in the spa. So of course the manager doesn't want to give you that time off. So somehow as an industry, we have to get better at making sure that we set up our business in a way that respects people's personal time. And so people have to be able to reasonably take breaks from work,
Mhm.
have their days off without being, bothered and inundated by emails and phone calls and problems that they have to deal with. And people have to be able to take vacations and get away. And sometimes people have to be able to get away on a weekend when the spa is busy and
Mhm.
spend time with their family and friends that all have the weekends off. So, yeah, I mean, I just think as a compassionate leader and knowing that the priorities of the workforce have changed, we have to reflect on the way that we schedule our workers and the way that we run our business. And we just need to check in with ourselves and make sure, am I respecting the personal time
Mhm.
of my colleagues? Are they able to do what they need to do in their free time and get away from work? Or am I interfering with that in some way?
Well, that's very generous of you to think that way. I mean, honestly, I think it's a huge ask right now. And I don't know how we solve it going forward, because I totally agree with you about respecting people's time. The easy solution is that, okay, we'll just hire more people to fill in the blanks when you don't want to be here, but we don't have more people to hire. So this is going to be a challenge that we have to work out. And I don't know if you have the answer. I know I don't, but it's something to think about, how we deploy people and how we schedule appointments for guests. I mean, maybe the operating hours need to be different, or something else has to change to make everyone happy. I don't know the answer.
Yeah, I mean, this is why I use the word compassionate leadership, because I think a lot of these things, there aren't necessarily easy answers,
Mm.
and it's not black and white. I mean, we do need people to work, and we do need the business to run, and but traditionally in our industry, we just expect people to kind of chip in.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, we're busy. Can you work an extra shift? Can you
Mm-hmm.
stay late? Can you come in on your day off? Can you work over the holidays? Can you work over the weekend? Can you, work the graveyard shift in a hotel somewhere? We have always expected people to do that. In the last 2 years, because of the situation that the hospitality industry has been in, we have basically asked our workforce to, roll up their sleeves and step in
24/7,
and
totally.
yeah, and it's been nonstop.
Mm-hmm.
And normally you have these fluctuations in the business, like, okay, it's all hands on deck now, but now we have a lull and everybody can take their unused leave and everybody
Right.
can take a break and, take an extra day off or, try to recover from the busy period. But for 2 years, we haven't had that, and people are
Mm-hmm.
burnt out in our
Mm-hmm.
industry for sure. So there isn't an easy solution, but I think the important thing is just that the leader is aware
Mm-hmm.
of the burden that our employees are carrying and that we are thinking, sometimes in some of our spas right now, we are having to turn away business
Mm-hmm.
because we need to give our colleagues time off. We need to
Mm-hmm.
give them days off, and we can't expect people to, to work 7 days a week and to always be doing overtime. So it's a difficult situation right now. The industry is
Mm-hmm.
clearly struggling with this dynamic, but that compassion and that awareness of the manager to understand how it feels for their workers to be in that situation, I think, is important.
Well, you're right. And at least demonstrating that you're aware, that, and if you have to make that ask, doing it in a rueful way and not a demanding way, um, is probably very helpful. Your last point, Jeremy, was about enhancing the well-being of the staff. And did you mean at work or in life, like in a more general sense?
Yeah, that's a good way of asking the question because I think it really is both. Basically, I always talk about how we live in the age of wellness everywhere,
Hmm.
which is people today aren't content. If I think about our parents' generation or our grandparents' generation, they would maybe work in a very unhealthy environment and deal with the stress of work and not ideal working conditions, and maybe they carve out a pocket of time for themselves on their weekend or when they go on holiday where they can focus on their own well-being. But people today expect wellness everywhere. They want it at home, they want it at work, they want it when they travel. So people don't want to work somewhere if they feel like their job is compromising their well-being.
Mm-hmm. And
And so
that we're
as a
seeing especially right now.
absolutely. And so there's a lot of aspects to this. I mean, one is the virus. So are we creating workspaces that are safe? And I think a lot of people that have left the industry have questioned whether the spas or the hotels that they are working for are taking appropriate measures to make sure that the colleagues are protected, not just that the guests are protected, but that the
Mm-hmm.
colleagues are safe, that the colleagues aren't being asked to do things that would unnecessarily expose them to health risks. Um, and then it's about both. It's about, are you doing things at work so that people spend most of their waking hours at work? So are there activities happening at work that help people to feel at their best and to be at their best and to
Mm-hmm.
maintain their well-being? And also, are are we compassionate? And it goes back to the point about giving people their personal time, but do people have time outside of work to pursue the things that they need to do to maintain their well-being? So do people have
Mm-hmm.
time to go to the gym? Do they have time to play sports? Do they have
Mm-hmm.
time to pursue the activities that they enjoy doing that gets them outdoors and gets them moving their bodies and being healthy? Because if you're working 60, 70 hours a week, which I think we all know many managers in the
Mm-hmm.
hospitality industry are working those kinds of hours. then, it's difficult to carve out time for yourself to be taking care of your well-being. And
No,
in the context,
we know, I'm sorry, being wellness people, that is not sustainable, right? I mean, you can't sustain those hours and be at your best. One week, okay, but not week after week.
that's right. And in this great reprioritization, I think a lot of people have reflected on that, and maybe they've had more time to take care of their well-being because they have been on a work furlough or because their spas have been shut down. And so they, were able to exercise more and were able to start taking care of themselves, and they're concerned about their health
Mhm.
because we see with the virus that people whose health is compromised are the most impacted by the virus. So people are motivated to be healthy, but they need to work in a business that supports them in that and that helps them to accomplish their health goals, as well as their economic goals.
That's really lovely. Can you give us an example of anything that you've done at any of your spas that is a work activity that helps them have enhanced well-being? Any suggestions?
Well, we were actually on the verge of launching a new initiative, when the virus broke out, and we realized that we basically couldn't launch that initiative because it just wasn't as relevant,
Mm,
at that moment. And so we shifted gears 2 years ago and we focused on our colleagues. So we created an inner strength, outer strength program, which was basically a 4-week training program that we invited all employees, not just spa and wellness, but across Mandarin Oriental, to participate in this training program to focus on their own well-being. And so it was inner strength, outer strength, because it combined aspects of inner strength, such as mindfulness and resilience and character strengths, with aspects of outer strength, which was more like vitality, nutrition, and fitness.
mm.
And and yeah, we just felt that everybody was struggling and we're all facing a lot of difficult situations. And so we wanted to make sure that our colleagues were strong. Like, what can
Mhm.
we do to help our employees be strong and support them in building their strength so that
And
they're able to,
resilience. We need that right
yeah,
now.
and so that we're all able to handle the difficult circumstances that we're all dealing with right now.
That sounds so nice. How I'm sure it was well received.
Yeah, people have loved it. It was a learning experience for us because we created it as a 4-week course. But it's difficult also, once people in the beginning when everybody was on lockdown and people had time to do it, it was great. Now that everybody's back at work, it's harder for people to spend time on a
Mhm.
4-week course dedicated to well-being. But we also we've done a lot of support around mental wellness in the last year and a half. So we have actually trained and certified mental health first aiders in every one of our hotels and offices around the world, just to have somebody who had some coaching and training to
Mm.
be a listening ear for people who are going through mental health issues or experiencing undue stress and anxiety. Um, and we've created on our colleague wellness page a section around mental wellness. So I think the mental aspect and the inner strength aspect of that has been one of our biggest learnings of how critical that is for people right now.
That's awesome, Jeremy. I mean, I can't think of a spa or any business for that matter that wouldn't benefit from having a mental health person to talk to on every corner, so to speak. Go ahead.
Yeah, indeed. We've all, I think it's 100% normal that people are experiencing a lot of stress and anxiety right now because we have all had to deal with an incredible amount of uncertainty.
Hmm.
The uncertainty of the world today is unprecedented.
Hmm.
And from psychology, we know that uncertainty is one of the greatest drivers of stress, anxiety, depression. When we don't feel confident that we know what the future will hold or that we can be successful in the future, then we worry. And so it's very normal that people would be experiencing a lot of stress and anxiety right now. But I like this idea of inner strength, that
Mm.
really it's about being able to handle the stress, being strong enough to deal with the uncertainty, or having that sense of strength, which is knowing that you have tools in your toolbox that you can use. And so you might not know what the future will bring, but you feel that you're capable of handling whatever might get thrown at you.
Oh, and
So
you know
that
what's
that
beautiful about that is that they own that, right? That's not, they don't lose that when they leave Mandarin. I mean, they're acquiring a skill that they can take to their next job and forward in life. And that's a wonderful gift.
Absolutely. And not only can they take it to their next job, but even in their current job, they can take it home and be
Mhm.
strong for their family and be strong for their social network and be strong about, you know, uh, creating the priorities that they have in their life and establishing the goals that they have for themselves. So yeah, I think this idea of strength is a rallying cry that
Mhm.
we have really moved around in Mandarin Oriental. And I think it's a good way of thinking about it for our industry.
Well, Jeremy, this has been so enlightening. I really appreciate it, and I'm sure our listeners will too. In closing, just want to ask you something. If I'm imagining I'm a listener and I want to know how I'm doing as a leader, if I ask a leader, how are you doing with this or that? They'll say, "Oh, I'm really good at that," but when you ask the staff how their leader is, you get a different response. Are you a fan of 360 reviews, or how do you suggest a leader really gets a handle on how their staff is perceiving them?
Yeah, I like the idea of the 360 review, but I'm not as much of a fan of all of the different formal types of review and evaluation processes that are out there in business. I think those are tools that are designed to help people communicate when they don't communicate regularly or
Mm.
well enough. So really, I think the approach is that to take that idea of a 360 review, and it goes back to what I said at the very beginning. Are you having 360 communication with everybody around you? And so if your employees are not happy with you as a leader, you should know that because you're talking to them regularly and that you're creating an environment where they feel free to tell you
Mm.
about the frustrations that they have and about the concerns that they have. And so, if you're not creating that environment, or if you don't know how your employees feel about you, then you need to kind of question
Mm.
your communication style, and are you creating an environment where that information can come forward?
So it's probably fair to say that if you're a leader who thinks everything is great and everyone loves you, you maybe need to look a little deeper into what's happening.
Well, and look, I think of leadership is not something where you get to a point where you say, okay, I've learned how to be a leader and
I'm
now I'm
done.
perfect and,
Yeah.
and everybody loves me and I'm done. You are always learning and you are always going to disappoint someone
Mm.
somewhere. You're never going to get it right every time. But I think it's about that dialogue and keeping the door open for continued learning, for continued understanding, and so that listening and hearing what the people who work for you are feeling and what they're struggling with and what they're going through is the biggest source of value of
Mm.
how do we learn as leaders and how do we continually craft our leadership style in a way that is relevant to the people who work for us.
Oh, well, and I suppose this is where inner strength is really helpful, because you as a leader need to be able to recognize when you're not delivering on your promise and make those changes that you need to. And that takes some courage.
Yeah, I mean, I think the idea of strength and looking after well-being, it doesn't only apply to our teams. We have to take care of ourselves first, and
Mhm.
and that was a part of the idea of launching that inner strength, outer strength course. Is I need my colleagues to be the be at work, delivering the best of themselves, taking care of our customers. But first, I need to make sure that they're healthy, that they're strong, that they're feeling good, that they're emotionally in a good place, so that then they can go in and bring the best of themselves. And
Mhm.
so that, that is probably where this whole idea of compassionate leadership needs to go, is if we want to have incredible service experiences, incredible wellness experiences, if we want to be delivering the best experiences to our customers, we need to have a workforce that is strong, healthy, happy, and that they're looked after so that they can be giving the best of themselves to our customers.
Well said, Jeremy. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Jeremy McCarthy, Group Director of Spa and Wellness for Mandarin Oriental. This talk was part of a white paper that you wrote, I believe, for Pulse Magazine, the iSpa publication. So if anybody wants to read Jeremy's words, you can look for it there. And thank you again for joining us today.
Thank you, Lisa. Good talking to you.
You too.